we're now being joined by Mr. Sesugh Akume, a public policy analyst, to discuss the politics of the coming 10th National Assembly leadership positions. Thank you, Mr. Akume, for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the party has urged the public in a statement just read, earlier on, moments ago, to disregard reports that it has zoned the Senate presidency seat to the south-south, the deputy Senate president seat to the northwest, and indeed other leadership positions in the lower chamber. Is this an indication that it may not necessarily heed agitations for zoning for this round of elections into key positions of the National Assembly?
The APC has shown inconsistency over time, so it's difficult to say what it's going to happen. It does not follow precedents or standard practices of how things are done. So it remains whatever they do that we'll get to see. It's not as if they know where the thing is heading by themselves. They just decide things based on whims and caprices. Let's go back to 2015. Before 2015, before the 8th National Assembly, there was APC, led by ACN, and the other parties that formed APC were in the minority. When it now won elections in 2015 and it became the majority in the National Assembly, it should have gone without saying that whoever was the Senate leader, or this minority leader, as of the time, Senator George Akume, he ought to have been made the leader of the party in the National Assembly and automatically become the Senate president. And his deputy as a minority Senate leader would have been the deputy Senate president, and accordingly that way. Same way for the House of Representatives. But APC confused the whole thing because there were personal interests to advance. That's how everybody was contesting, and that's how Senator Bukola Saraki became the Senate president by ways that seemed unorthodox. It should never have happened. There should be a standard procedure. That's how parliaments are run across the globe, but not so for APC. So, whereas the minority leader, the Senate minority leader, who was head of the opposition in the Senate, should automatically have become Senate president, and following that way, then you can now know where the thing was heading, but it didn't happen so. If it's about zoning and about being from the North Central, wherever they said the Senate president should have been, the Senator George Akume was from the North Central, where Senator Bukola Saraki emerged. I don't know how they decided that the Senate president should go to the Northeast. I think they were looking for a particular person, and they did their calculations and removed the person who was the Senate leader. Removed the Senate leader and then Ali Ndume at the time, and put in Senator Lawan, who eventually became the Senate president. So it's not about there's a procedure that they're going to be following or something you would know that, no. It depends on how their personal interests lie and whom they want to use as a rubber stamp or however they want to do it. So it's not following a certain pattern. But if our politics weren't primitive, it should have had a pattern whereby we would know that this is the Senate leader, this is the House leader, and this is how it should follow, whether they're going to be doing it by zoning or however. There should be a pattern over time, but there's none.
So if the party were to follow patterns now in this 10th Assembly, fill in the gaps. Which regions really are deserving of the key leadership positions, i.e. Senate President, Deputy Senate President, Speaker, and Deputy Speaker?
I would not be minded to answer that question well, because I'm not particularly a proponent of that zoning thing. I don't understand its benefit to the everyday Nigerian. I honestly don't. I don't know what it does for anybody, because I don't know what it does for anybody, and I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what it does for anybody. I would rather have what do we want to achieve at this time and who fits this best, and then there are people who come out for it, and then we know who fits the bill the most. By the way, what is APC's agenda for the 10th National Assembly? And what is the opposition's agenda towards the 10th National Assembly? Those are the things that should top the discussion, and then from there we'll know who fits the bill the most. Otherwise, I don't get it. But I understand maybe part of the reason people talk about the zoning thing is for purposes of equity and seeming to be representing people. But the evidence doesn't show that when the Senate presidency goes to a certain place or this place or that, there's more development or there's more progress or there are better laws or better representation. I've not seen that. So I may not be minded to go in the direction where it should go.
But then again, how does the party
focus more on individuals some more?
How does the party then strike a balance between those factors that you mention, i.e. An agenda, a developmental agenda for the National Assembly, rewarding the zones, geopolitical zones that delivered on voting that led to its triumph at the polls, and of course, ranking, and then, inclusion, the agitation for zoning to a particular region, inclusion and fairness. How does it balance all of this, and then emerging with a fair deal for all involved?
I don't think that APC and fairness can be used in the same sentence. I don't think that's what underscores anything they calculate about. I don't know. And the other part about which zone produced the most votes, I also don't see how the thing may work if we're going to be looking at all those factors you raised, which I agree are cogent. The Northwest has 7 states, has the largest number of registered voters, and will naturally always produce more votes. So shall we say that because the Northwest does not have the presidency, the president does not have the vice president, therefore the Senate president should go to the Northwest, and so many other positions? I don't think about who brought the most votes and so on should really count. I personally don't think so. But I think first and foremost, you should start with what the agenda is. The 9th National Assembly performed very poorly in my assessment, and based on the evidence before everybody else. I mean, the outgoing Senate president declared that he was in the National Assembly to protect the interests of an individual, President Buhari. That's no leader of any legislature anywhere in the world has ever said his duty as the head of a legislature is to serve the head of an executive. It's never been done before. So maybe those are the calculations that made all the things we spoke about earlier for him to emerge as Senate president. So when we're talking about this, they also have their own agenda at the back of the door, whereby they're looking at a certain individual who is going to fit some very narrow interests, not about the general thing we're talking about. What is the agenda for the National Assembly? How can we do better? How can the National Assembly deliver more for Nigerians? And what is the agenda 2023 to 2027, and who can fit this best, and how can we go about it? I don't think that's how they're reasoning, but I actually think that's how we should be reasoning if we really care about the country.
Yes, and if you think that the 9th National Assembly performed very poorly, I'm sure that somewhere in the mix, of course, you can hazard a guess or, tell categorically who fits the bill. But I understand your reason to plead the fifth there. Mr. Akume, I want to thank you very much for your time on Lunchtime Politics. Mr. Akume is a public affairs analyst.